What is up, golf fans, and welcome back to another episode of Fairways and Dreams. I'm your host, Jeff Hartman, on this Tuesday podcast as a part of the Golfer Gang Network of podcasts. Thank you all for tuning in. This is my solo show. We're going to have 3 shows for you this week. I know I said that last week, and I did not deliver. My apologies, but still, we'll have today's Fairways and Dreams, where we're preparing you for the 2026 U.S. Open. We'll talk 5 key storylines and the latest news in golf. Then we have the press podcast tomorrow, where I give you my picks and predictions for the third major of the 2026 season. And then lastly, we're going to have the golf mixtape with my buddy Dan from Leave the Pin coming up on Thursday. So we have a full slate of shows for you this week. Let's get this started, right? Preparing for the U.S. Open. The U.S. Open descends on Shinnecock Hills Golf Club. This is in New York, Southampton, New York, to be specific. It's a par 70 course, 7,440 yards. It's interesting. I was doing some research on the golf course. I was reading about it. And Shinnecock Hills has basically said, we have no real interest in trying to continually extending the golf course. You talk about Augusta National and all these other venues where they're constantly trying to one-up the golfers and how far they're hitting the golf ball. Shinnecock Hills kind of reminds me of Aronimink, which is the course in Philadelphia, just outside of Philadelphia, that housed the 2026 PGA Championship. You could also say Pinehurst number 2 down there in North Carolina. You could say Oakmont, just outside of Pittsburgh. And these are venues that say, you know what, we can make this course tough without having to extend it another 500 yards. And those courses, in my opinion, are sometimes the best. And they are sometimes the most daunting for golfers. And so when you talk about the course, we're going to talk about the course, obviously. But this could be a true test of golf. If you like to watch golfers struggle, I mean, remember, Aaron Rai won the PGA Championship this year at Runnemink, and he was, I think, 9 under par. And some people were all up in arms. It could be way worse. It's going to be way worse at Shinnecock Hills. The players that can outlast and be patient enough on this golf course are going to be the ones that are vying for a championship at the end of the weekend. So it's going to be fascinating. I decided to boil this down into 5 key storylines for the upcoming U.S. Open. I'm going to start off, and this is in no particular order, just how they came into my brain. Is this the tournament where Scottie Scheffler taps off or finishes his career Grand Slam? Only 6 golfers in the modern era have completed what we call the modern Grand Slam by winning all 4 majors. And this is the only one he hasn't had. You know, last year he wins 2. He won the PGA. He also won the Open Championship. So you tack that on with his 2 Masters victories. He is a U.S. Open away. When you think about Rory, how long it took him, he would do it a lot faster. And I'll tell you what, I think that Scottie Scheffler has a really legitimate shot at winning this tournament. He's had some good finishes in past U.S. Opens, not so much last year at Oakmont, but if you go back to 2023, 2022, second, third place finishes, he's done well at U.S. Opens before. Scottie's season this far has not looked what as it's usually looked, as what we got to know since 2023 when he really came onto the scene and started winning at a bunch of tournaments. He's only won once this year, the American Express tournament, but ultimately he has been at or near the top of leaderboards and outside of, I think, the PGA Championship, that is also including the majors. And so you look at this and you say, what is Scottie going to have to do to win the career Grand Slam? I feel fairly confident that he's going to do it eventually. Shinnecock Hills, could this be the course that he does it on? I do think it actually sets up well for him under one stipulation, and that's how he drives the golf ball. But I always have to pause and tell myself that if you were to go back a decade and say, will Jordan Spieth win? They have all 4 of the career Grand Slam. We all would have said, absolutely. There's no doubt about it that Jordan Spieth is going to win all 4 majors. And yet, here we are, 2026, and he has not won all 4 majors. So it's a situation where it's very weird, very unique. He would have, I don't know in terms of how long it has taken Scottie Scheffler, if he wins the U.S. Open, to complete the career Grand Slam. I don't know if the time it took him since he became a carrying card member on the PGA Tour, how long, but still, that's a big storyline. It might be the biggest storyline for some people, but it's the first on my list for sure. Can Scottie Scheffler complete the career Grand Slam? Also, I think Shinnecock Hills, the second key storyline, it's the course. It is the course. So I mentioned it's Southampton, New York. It is a links-style golf course. It was opened in 1891. William Flynn, he was the designer that in the early 1900s kind of turned it into what it is today. It is an old golf course. It is kind of and it's what's great about link style golf. And I did an entire podcast last year on the different styles of golf courses. And the link style golf courses look, it's the lay of the land. We're not going to be moving a bunch of dirt. Sure, they're going to move dirt because they need to maybe make an elevated green here, or we want to do that there, or put a bunker there, whatever. But they're not plowing a lot of ground in this respect. So looking back on this golf course, it's housed in the modern era. We'll go back into the 90s, the U.S. Open 3 times. And I don't necessarily want to talk about who won, but I want to talk about their finishing scores. So in 1995, Corey Pavin won the U.S. Open at Shinnecock Hills, and he finished with an even par score. Even par won the U.S. Open that year. In 2004, it was Retief Goosen who won. Retief Goosen finished 4 under par. Not a bad score when you look at some of the other scores that we're talking about. And then in 2018, it housed the U.S. Open, and Brooks Koepka won. It was his second of back-to-back U.S. Open victories. And what was his final score? 1 over par. 1 over par. This is a golf course that is, again, only at 7,440 yards. It's not the longest course these guys are going to play. This isn't the Blue Monster or Doral. But this course is challenging. It is challenging in a lot of ways. I know that Scotty Scheffler spoke before the Memorial Tournament that he went to Shinnecock for the first time this year to play and get a feel for what the course looks like and the field. And he talked about how wide the fairways are. And he said, but if you don't hit the fairway, like the first cut of rough is going to be 4 to 5 inches in length. And then you have the second cut, which is going to be like a really tall fescue. So if you can hit the fairway, that's half the battle. You're going to give yourself a chance. But he talked about the green complexes and the mounds and how everything kind of just rolls off, and they could really put the pins in some nasty pin placements. It's going to be really, really interesting to see how Shinnecock Hills Golf Course continues to hold up against the best players in the game by making some really, really difficult conditions in terms of green speed, rough length, all that stuff. Shinnecock Hills Golf Club, that in and of itself is the second storyline. The third storyline is for fans, expect high scores. I mentioned Brooks Koepka winning the U.S. Open at 1 over par. There are some people that love that. There are some people that say, the more pain you can bring these guys, the better. Bring on the pain train is essentially what they're saying. I don't know if I fall into that category. I love to see golfers get tested, but I also love to see good scoring. I don't want to see guys 4 and 5 putting holes. I want to see them having to work. I want to see them having to manage the course. This course definitely would fall into that category. But if you're thinking that even a 9 under par is going to win this tournament, I disagree 100%. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. I'm wrong all the time. But I don't think you're going to see a player that's going to get anywhere near double-digit under par unless the conditions, if it rains a ton and they can't dry out the course and they're able to really fly at pins and they have, they're getting relief, not relief from the rough, but if they're in the fairway, they get preferred lies or they mark clean in place. If that's the case, then maybe that changes. But I still, even in those conditions, soft greens, soft course, preferred lies in the fairway, I still don't see the winner being near 10 under par, double digits under par. You mentioned Retief Goosen at 4 under. When you see how these players are going to have what they're going to have to deal with, that sounds like an incredible score. 4 under par over 4 rounds of golf. So expect high scores. Do not expect what we've seen in the past at the PGA Championship. That's not what this course is going to do. This is going to challenge them in very unique ways. All right, the next topic is one that I always find interesting is big guns versus the field. That's what we're talking. Big guns versus the field. Exactly who is going to win. We have seen, and I'll talk about this when we get to the latest news in golf, some new names winning golf tournaments this year. Some big tournaments. No one would have thought that Aaron Rai was going to win the PGA Championship last month in the month of May. Rory winning the Masters is no shock. It's back-to-back green jackets for him. But is it going to be a big gun? And we're talking about your in terms of winners this year, especially? Is it going to be a Justin Rose? Is it going to be a Matt Fitzpatrick? Is it going to be a Scotty Scheffler? Is it going to be a Rory McIlroy? Or will it be someone that we really haven't seen do it before, like an Aaron Rai at the PGA Championship? Most recently, we've seen a lot of golfers that have never won on tour finding their way into the victory circle. It's going to be interesting to see who wins big guns versus the field. That might be a bet that we make on the Press Podcast. Make sure you check that out tomorrow. And then lastly, the fifth and final storyline for me heading into the U.S. Open. Will we hear more complaining about the setup and the course? Because at the PGA Championship, there were some players that were like, you know what, hey, these are really tough pin placements. But man, like the fans, the media, the pundits, they just were like, this course setup is awful. And it sounded like they were really complaining, crying over spilled milk is what they would say. That's what it seemed like to me. Oh, the course is playing tough. You thought it was going to be easy. Okay, it's not. So deal with it. Everyone's playing the same course. Yes, you might go out in the morning, then in the afternoon, and those conditions might vary. But ultimately, they're the same pin placements. It's the same fairway, same rough for everyone. I guess I feel like at some way you get to this point with professional golfers where you just kind of say, suck it up. And you got to go out there and do the best that you can. Because like I mentioned earlier, Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy talked about it as well. The fairways are much wider than they expected. So you're going to have the ability to drive the ball well, hit the fairway. But if you miss those wide fairways, you are going to be dead. And that's it. You're talking about if you go into that second cut, we're not talking about getting to the green. You're talking about laying up, even on par fours. You talk about the unique challenges. I think it's number 11, where Lee Trevino, it's a par 3. It's only about 157 yards. He called it the world's shortest par 5. This hole, when you look at it, and you'll see it on the weekend, it's this real narrow green with these bunkers. Everything rolls off into the bunkers. Just such a challenging hole. They have a par 5 over 500 yards. This course has such unique challenges. My question is, are we going to hear more complaining about the course and the setup? And if we don't, I'm going to ask the question, what was the difference between what they did at Shinnecock and what they did at Aronimink? That's what I want to know. And if there's no one complaining, is it just because it's the U.S. Open and that's the PGA Championship? And that tournament, the PGA Championship, is supposed to be easier? Is that what we're doing now? I don't know. We'll have to see how that all plays out. But ultimately, I'm going to be interested to hear what is said and felt about the course, the setup, etc. So those are the 5 storylines for me heading into this tournament. Scotty Scheffler's career Grand Slam, Shinnecock Hills, the golf club in and of itself. How does it hold up against the game's best? The expectation that high scores are going to win, big guns versus the field, and then more complaining about the course and the setup. So there you have it, folks, my 5 key storylines heading into the U.S. Open. It's going to be a lot of fun. I hope you're looking forward to it. I know I am. Next, let's talk about the latest news, and this all stems around Bud Cauley. Bud Cauley goes up to Canada, and he wins the RBC Canadian Open. 2-shot victory, 17 under par. But you know, it's funny. A lot of times he held off some big names. He held off Matt Fitzpatrick, Victor Hovland, Tommy Fleetwood was in the mix. There were some good players vying for that tournament and that title, and he was the one that held him off. So he punched his ticket to Shinnecock. He punched his ticket to the Masters next year in 2027. I talked specifically about Gary Woodland when he won earlier this year and how crazy it was for him to win. And he talked about his brain tumor and that removal and the PTSD that he's had since. Bud Cauley's story is almost equally as crazy. If you go back and read about it, watch videos on it, and he was involved in a very serious car accident at the Memorial Tournament in 2018. I think he had missed the cut. It was after the Friday round. He wasn't driving, but he gets into a serious car accident. He breaks several bones in his body, punctures a lung. They have to put in this kind of like cage in and around his lung to help the organ. And little did I know that, he comes back from the broken bones. He's able to swing golf clubs again, but they have to go in and remove that cage that was in and around his lungs, and they struggle with it. He gets open wounds, which can be bacterial. There's issues with the second surgery, and he didn't know what was going to happen. Like if you get infection, you can die. Sepsis can set in, all this stuff. He finally is able to get back on tour in 2024. It was a medical exemption that the PGA Tour has because he was dealing with all the surgeries, etc. And he ends up almost winning the PGA Championship last year, but he gets himself into more tournaments because of that. And then he finally gets over that proverbial hump and wins the RBC Canadian Open, his first victory of his career. And you talk about, again, you talk about some of these stories, whether it's Gary Woodland, now you talk about Bud Cauley. Some of these stories, if you were to pitch this to Disney, they'd say, you can get the hell out of here. There's no way anyone's going to believe that. Yet it actually happened. And Bud Cauley talked about how it was after his accident that he met his wife, and he's going back and talking about how if it weren't for the accident, his life would not have been as good as it is now. Like, just really crazy stuff. So for me, Bud Cauley definitely deserves to be talked about in the latest news in golf as we talk about, getting ready for the U.S. Open. So with Bud Cauley winning at the RBC Canadian Open, I thought, man, we've had some crazy names of winners this year on tour. So I went back and looked at all the winners from this year. And yes, you have, Matt Fitzpatrick has won 3 times. Cameron Young's won twice. Chris Gotterup has won twice this year. But most recently, there's been some names that are just not household names. I mean, if you're a golf sicko, as they call themselves, Wyndham Clark's and Russell Henley's, but JT Poston, most people don't know him. Christopher Wrighton, most people don't know who he is. Jacob Bridgman, Nico Echevarria that won. There's been those names that we know, but most recently there's been some names where people are probably saying, like, who is that player? Who is that guy? I don't know. But still, to give you the whole list, not in any particular order of the 2026 winners, here's who we have so far. Chris Gotterup's won twice. Matt Fitzpatrick's won 3 times. Alex Fitzpatrick has won once. Cameron Young's twice. Scotty Scheffler once. Gary Woodland once. Jacob Bridgman, Nico Echevarria, Akshay Bhatia, Colin Morikawa, JJ Spawn, Rory McIlroy, Christopher Wright, and Wyndham Clark, Russell Henley, JT Poston, Justin Rose, and now Bud Cauley adds his name to the list as one-time winners so far on the 2026 PGA Tour. So it's crazy. It's crazy. It's a crazy time of year. We're getting ready for the U.S. Open, and the 2027 schedule is being released slowly, and it is being criticized by a lot of people. I know Jack Nicklaus, most notably before the Memorial Tournament, was very vocal about how he did not like it. He doesn't like where they're moving tournaments and how players are going to have to make decisions on big tournaments that they usually play in to not play in, all this stuff. Just really crazy stuff in terms of where the PGA Tour wants to go, where they see it being a better product, and what it actually looks like. And if I'm being honest, when you go back to when they decided to start the signature events, there was a lot of the same discussion then. Oh, signature events are just going to be watered down. You're eliminating those smaller players who could have a great weekend and win a tournament. Sure, I get it. But signature fields have slowly expanded. Some of them still have cut lines, and it's become a regular part of the PGA Tour. And so I'm sure that a lot of times change is not comfortable for everyone. Jack might also not like where the Memorial is compared to other tournaments and majors and stuff like that. So that might be one of the reasons why he has a gripe about it. We'll wait until we see the official schedule before I take a look at it and give my thoughts. And honestly, I don't really care. I still wish they put more time in between the majors. I hate how we're already getting ready for the U.S. Open, which is the 3rd major in July. We're going to have the 4th, and then that's it until the President's Cup. Yes, the Tour Championship, but that doesn't carry the same gravitas of a major tournament. I'd love to see them extend the significant tournaments out into at least August, maybe even September if they wanted. So that's just my own personal opinion. But hey, that's it for me on this Fairways and Dreams podcast. Make sure you check out the press podcast tomorrow and give you my picks and predictions. The majors are tough. You get those live golfers back in the mix. You have no idea how their game's playing. It's going to be really interesting. We'll talk about that tomorrow on the press podcast. We finished it out. Be safe, be kind, and God bless. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow on the press. Take it easy.